Please turn left in 100 meters at the end of the road onto Flinders Lane, and then immediately turn left. Now turn left, and then immediately turn left. Now turn left, and then turn right. Please turn right in 100 meters at the end of the road onto the 30. Now turn right. Prepare to turn left.
You know, that violin. I was like, what is this music? And then when tradition hits, you know, yeah, I was like, what is? Because I hadn't heard traditional Yiddish music, and not, especially not in a theatrical context like that. So that was like, for me, Broadway cast albums were an entry into an entirely new world, not just of a new narrative, but often new sounds and new ways of making music. I discovered a lot of, you know, I remember the Jesus Christ Superstar. That was
shiver up my spine. I was getting. I was
Godspell.
Godspell, I love.
Godspell.
A little bit of Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's a part of the pun you are singing from the same hymn book right here.
Yeah.
It's the shows that I love.
But the two shows that were the biggest influence because we had them on cassette in the combi van when we went on family camping trip there. A similar. Was on two cassettes.
Check out my fiance. 있네라 미세 누르었네. 야.
Good morning, Chris. We have a little problem with audio, which Rachel is seeking to address.
We can see Chris's face.
We can.
That's important.
Okie dokie. Well, we can talk amongst ourselves.
Does he know Auslan?
Can you hear us, Chris? No, he can't. All right.
Well, I've got a story.
Are you there, Chris? Yeah, actually, Dr. Beach, if you could, that would be
we
great.
can hear him now.
Can we?
Oh,
Talk.
are you there, Chris? Can you hear us? No, we can hear him, but he can't hear us. So you go, Dr.
So I'm going to
Beach.
tell you a story about noctiluca scintillans, phosphorescence. Dr. Surf, you're looking at me. You recognise this. It's a dinoflagellate. So, one of my favourite things is unicellular algae. We've got plankton, we've got the animal plankton, we've got the plant plankton. And some of those plant plankton give us phosphorescence. Well, there's one particular cell which is called noctiluca, and the people have just published a paper in Current Biology telling us how, or figuring out how, and this is a group from Stanford, figuring out how this does the vertical migration. So people may have heard about the great migration which happens every 24 hours with the plankton. So if you think of the plant plankton, what they have to do is hang up around in the surface and get sunlight so they can do photosynthesis. They do that during the day, but what they tend to do at night is to sink down into around 100 metres sort of out of what we call the euphotic zone, or just out of the euphotic zone. The reason they do that is that there's a heap of nutrients down there. Lots of things for them to suck into their cells and to feed themselves.
Oh, very clever.
It is very clever to get back up to the surface. They do that by various means. Some of them swim, they've got little flagella on them. But there's this very prominent one called noctiluca, the phosphorescent one, and people had no idea how it did this vertical migration because it doesn't have these hair-like cilia on them, flagella, which enables it to move around. So many of the plankton can propel themselves. This guy can't. What it does, you're looking at me intelligently.
I'm thinking you've got a big vacuole.
It is. It's a big vacuole. It's a big, so imagine you've got like a big bag inside yourself, a big
Like a
balloon, and you fill that up with water.
Yeah.
Now, the cell, because it's got goodies in there, it's got all sorts of cellular organelles, it's got proteins, it's got other stuff, is slightly more dense than seawater. So it sinks. It has this tendency to sink, but it wants to get back up, but it can't push itself back up. So what it does is, straight after the cell divides, so say every 24 hours or so they divide down the bottom. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as that happens, they suck all this water into this big sort of balloon, you can imagine on the inside of the cell. And that water that they're sucking in, they select the quality of the water coming in. So they take out the heavy molecules from that. So what they're doing is taking on water, which is lighter than the surrounding seawater, and that gives them this buoyancy. So it's like a diver having a buoyancy vest. And then that enables them to float back up towards the surface so that they get the sunlight in the morning, and then the whole lot continues again. So a really cool way of getting around without using flagella.
Well, how clever is that?
Very clever. But let's talk about some swimming.
Excellent. I think what we might do...
Another type of swimming.
Yes, indeed. Do we have Chris on the phone? We don't. So what we might do is play a few station announcements that we were going to play anyway, and we'll try and get Chris. We'll be back in a moment.
Performing her latest album, Forever Changed, Nat Barsh's music radiates with tenderness and empathy. A pianist and advocate for neurodiversity in music, Forever Changed explores the unique sensory preferences and needs of those with autism and ADHD, crafted in consultation with music therapists and other neurodivergent individuals. Saturday, November 16 at Melbourne Recital Centre. Tickets at melbournerecital.com.au. Triple R sponsors.
Suppliers of elevated apparel and lifestyle goods, Harvin, are holding their annual warehouse sale. Save up to 70% on apparel, footwear and accessories from leading labels including Norse Projects, Studio Nicholson, Lemaire, Goldwyn, Arc'teryx, Topo Designs, Karu, Pendleton and many more. On now until Sunday at Schoolhouse Studios, 28 Victoria Street, Coburg. Doors open 10 till 8 Friday and 10 till 5 Saturday and Sunday. Harvin, Triple R sponsors.
Baker Boy headlines a Blacktivism lineup of living legends and rising voices of First Nations musical activism. Joined by an incredible lineup, including Bart Willoughby, Young Warriors, Selwyn Burns, Robbie Thorpe, Kulin Nation Songwomen, Delene Briscoe, Sugarcane Mamas, Tasman Keith, Brothers in Arms, Yuramal and more. Blacktivism, one night only, Friday, November 22 in Hamer Hall. Part of Always Live 2024, only in Victoria. Tickets on sale at artcentermelbourne.com.au. Proud Triple R sponsors.
21 past 9, you're listening to Radio Marinara here on 3RRR. We've managed to sort out, well, actually we haven't. What we've done instead is go to the old faithful phone lines. Thank goodness they still exist. And I won't go through my introduction again. I'm just going to welcome to Triple R Chris Baker. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Bron. Good morning to you. How are you doing? Sorry about the hiccup.
Oh, that's all right. That happens from time to time. It's, wonders of technology. Sometimes they do trip us up and keep us on our toes. Now, this is an amazing book. I'm just going to mention the title of it again, Swimming Sydney, A Tale of 52 Swims. It actually began with a movie, and specifically Burt Lancaster's 1968 cult classic, The Swimmer. Thought we might start with The Swimmer. And can you tell us about the movie, why it left such a mark on you?
Yeah, sure. So the Swimmer is based on a book by John Cheever. It was originally published in the New Yorker magazine in 1964, short story. Then it got turned into a film about 4 years later, and as you mentioned, Burt Lancaster plays the lead in the film. It's a story of a middle-aged man who is a very privileged guy who lives in upstate New York, who decides that he's going to swim home. So it's this sort of macabre setup where he makes his way across suburban America by swimming his way through neighbours' pools. And as he goes along swimming from one pool to the next in order to get home, he crashes some parties and he has a few drinks and he guzzles some martinis. But as the story unfolds, it becomes pretty apparent that it's a metaphor for his life, and that his swimming is a reckoning as he deals with a number of things within his life. And as he starts to shed his armour of privilege and his sense of being out of place and out of sync, the swims advance and he gets unhinged more and more with every swim. I saw it as a teenage boy, or not even, I think I was about 10 when I first saw it on TV, and it's this sort of strange, beguiling film. But I managed to see it again about 40 years later. And interestingly, it was playing as part of a retrospective of films made in 1968. And during that period in 1968, as we know, America was going through great social upheaval, as I think it is now at the moment. And so the film really plays to a lot of our contemporary sensibilities about what I call Homo Americanus, this idea of privileged white people that have no understanding or no real sense of the fault lines that are building in the country. And yet, as he becomes more aware of his own shortcomings and problems, he also gets a greater understanding of society at large.
And what an appropriate time, really, to be reading this book, to be launching this book, with what you've just said as well. I wanted to touch on the fact that this is about Sydney, but it's kind of not, is it? Because all the themes that you've just mentioned are really, almost, you could call them universal.
Yeah, very much. I mean, certainly the book is centred in Sydney, and the conceit of the book is swimming across the city over the course of the year for 52 weeks, one swim a week. I wanted to swim the breadth and the length of Sydney. But as you say, it's much more a book about swimming in general. It's not just a Sydney-focused book. So I think anyone that's interested in swimming, anyone that's interested in the ocean, anyone that's interested in storytelling, I hope, will carry something from the book. Because what I've tried to do is to talk about how swimming enhances our sense of ourselves, how it can be a vehicle for understanding each other, for understanding country, for understanding storytelling, and why swimming plays, I think, such a central role not only in the Sydney psyche, but in the Australian psyche, and how we form and nurture a sense of community through swimmings and swimming pools. And if you think about a lot of the things that we associate with the Australian persona, it's things like gathering around the pool on a hot summer's night, cheering on Olympic swimmers, as we did a couple of months ago in August in Paris, the community that we often get from a swimming pool, whether it's the swim squads that get up early or the deep ocean swimmers, but also to how swimming in some ways enables us, I think, to have a better sense of ourselves and our understanding. And certainly I think a lot of pop culture in Australia taps into swimming, whether it's the books of people like Christos Tsiolkas or Robert Drew, whether it's our films, our storytelling. I think there's this strong sense of swimming being something that's desirable and aspirational in the Australian psyche. A lot of our rites of passage are connected to the ocean, and you know, I think there's this ideal that whether we honeymoon by the sea or we retire as a sea changer, there's this aspirational ideal that the sea can make us a better self and can access something that maybe the other elements can't.
Yeah, and the book, as you just said, it touches on diversity so much. Some of the people you've regularly swum with and have been brought out in this book as a 6-month-old baby learning to swim. Saturday morning, LGBTIQ plus swim squad. There's a meeting of asylum seekers at an undisclosed location for what I would see as fairly obvious reasons, and cancer survivors undertaking rehab. It really is about diversity, isn't it?
Very much, yeah. And I mean, so I tried to make that point that not only does the swimming community or communities, not only do they consist of a number of tribes, but it's indicative and reflective of modern Australia today, that we are a diverse country, and yet this is something that brings us together in very intimate and special ways. And, you know, and that swimming doesn't have to be exclusionary. It's something that can be inclusive.
So let's dive into the book. There's 52 swims, and there are, and you do cover 52 locations, and they're divided by seasons, and so it starts and ends with summer. How did you decide which swimming location belonged with which season? Because you don't really go into, there's no kind of temperature or really climactic reasons why particular pools belong with particular seasons. How did you decide where they all fitted?
Yeah, there are a couple of things that sort of guided where I swam when. Firstly, I wanted to give a sense of the seasonality of the city. So not only the 4 seasons, and as I say in the book, even those 4 seasons are blurry because, you know, when does summer really begin and when does it end? It's a debatable thing. But I wanted to get a sense of the seasonality of events. So I had things like, you know, Australia Day, Survival Day, and there was a venue that really spoke to that. Chinese New Year, the game
is by far and away, head and shoulders, the most technical show I've ever worked on.
Oh, no doubt.
That not just what the gorilla was doing, but there was the entire set with these sort of ongoing projections that moved and changed and shape-shifted, and the lighting was really spectacularly advanced. It was like, when it landed on Broadway, it was so interesting because audiences were like, what is this? It was sort of contemporary dance, it was puppetry, it was like a rock concert. It was ultimately, I think it was a little too much of lots of different things for audiences to understand what it was.
But it had a good run there. It ran for months and months, didn't it?
It did have a good run there, and I think you know, Sonny's puppet in Kong is one of the most extraordinary theatrical creations. I remember seeing it at the Regent in Melbourne as well, and just thinking, this is what a extraordinary risk this thing is.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love an audacious risk in theatre, and I always give things big props when I sit in an audience and I see something on stage I've never seen before. I think that's an extraordinary achievement.
And isn't that happening a lot, the special effects side of things? And it's happening, I saw it in Harry Potter as a good example.
Yeah.
I saw it in the current Beauty and the Beast, where you're sitting there and you look at the stage and then you think to yourself, what did I just see then?
Yeah.
It happens so quickly, like a set change or something will happen, or even Tina, all of a sudden she's behind the audience. Next minute you're in front watching a rock show. That transition.
I know.
So is that what you mean by that stuff that you're seeing?
Like, I mean, I guess those moments you're talking about, like, we would call them like a coup de théâtre, like a big theatrical moment that is surprising. And I think that's what's amazing about theatre, is that we know we are sitting in a seat watching something happening live on stage. So if you can create a sense of how did they do that, or how did they make that extraordinary thing happen, it's more magical than watching it on screen, where you know there's a digital manipulation involved. I think we remember seeing Aladdin and just watching that magic carpet and just being like, Jesus,
That's right.
how is
that?
You know,
they do that.
And then sometimes
It's like a magic show.
there's really simple things like, you know, Mike Birbiglia, the stand-up comedian, did a live comedy special called The New One, and it was taped and it's on Netflix, and that has what I would call a coup de théâtre, where he talks about becoming a dad. And then I don't want to spoil it for your listeners. If you don't want to have this spoiled,
Chin away. Grab the toast.
But immediately from somewhere up in the lighting rig, a ton of soft toys just drops onto the stage.
Yeah.
It was like, I became a father. Boom.
Bang.
And everybody knows what that means. Suddenly your life, you're drowning in stuff, kids stuff. And it's a simple moment. It happens in 1 second. It goes from a blank stage to an inundated stage that's full of nappies and toys and all sorts of things.
That's right.
And it's not just the surprise of it, but it's the idea of it that is so smart. It's like, suddenly you find yourself in this world. Boom, we're going to make that happen. I really love those moments. There's a couple of moments like that in Beetlejuice.
Oh,
and
good.
that's what's wild about theatre. You know, it's a technical show, but all of, like Harry Potter, there's a lot of magic, there's a lot of puppetry, and it's all integrated, enabled in order to make it a believable world of the afterlife, or of life and afterlife toggling between themselves. And I remember in the film, you know, you had to draw a door with a piece of chalk.
Yeah, I saw that, and then on the brick wall, in desperation
and you
times.
knock 3 times,
There you go.
and it opens. And, you know, creating a set where you could draw, you know, a chalk outline and then knock on it, and it would just magically become a door.
Is that
Like,
in the show?
yeah, that was,
Oh, good.
and then, you know, we've got to see all the tests for that. There's so much work that goes into that. Even when you open up the handbook for the recently deceased, like, I remember the day that we auditioned about 50 different sound effects for the sound of that book opening. Oh, it's going to sound like a stone being rolled away from a tomb, or it's going to sound like something being ripped open, you know. And they just cycle through all these sounds until you find stuff. And it's, I love the process of making a theatrical show, because it's a sort of an act of manipulation where you stand at the back of the show, the theatre, you watch an audience. What are they responding to? You're taking them on a sort of a ride. When are they bored? When are they shuffling in their seats? When are they looking at their watch? When are they coughing? All these signs that they're not engaged. And you're trying to create a show that grips people from the beginning and leads them in a really surprising, interesting way through a story. And it's a very crafted world. So when you get it right, it's a great sense of satisfaction that you've made this world that people can now live in and enjoy.
I love it. I'm so excited to see it. Beetlejuice is the show. It opens next year. Tickets are about to, if not already on sale. We'll give you the full information for that. We've got a bit more to talk about because we're only a little bit through the hour on a Sunday morning here in Melbourne.
Why do us Aussies choose adventure? Maybe it's for all the memories we make along the coast, by the river, or at picture-perfect campsites across Australia. Easy Trail caravans are ready for every adventure, designed with thoughtful features that give you the comforts of home. It's valued
or something, didn't they? In Sydney and in Melbourne, they went berserk, Dire Straits, when they were. And when were they? The early 90s? Were they 90?
I don't know. They're still classic. So
yeah. Exactly. So Emma, what do you do for a crust?
Look, I work in housing, so I guess you remarked about just taking good care of people, and when people need help, that really resonates. And I sort of also think you've got to take care of animals and take care of the land. So, yeah, I work in housing, and it's a big topic at the moment in most places around the country, one way or the other. So, trying to find enough homes for people, help people who need help with housing. Yeah, it's a big job at the moment.
I'd say, and good luck with your rewilding. Good luck with your rewilding. I think that's a wonderful thing, and I love planting stuff. And the deal would be just go and plant lots of stuff and see, because some won't survive and some will. But I mean, that's
yeah.
And then I was thinking to myself, why did that die, for God's sake? I put cow manure on it, and I did this, but you just go figure. But it's just about life, and it's great. But the more you put in, the more it'll survive, Emma.
Absolutely, and look, doing a huge amount of trying to get blackberry and, you know, all sorts of other weeds off the property as well. So there's sort of what you can put in and what you've got to take out. So, but yeah, incredibly satisfying. So.
Emma, great to talk to you. I'm glad you've reconnected. You'll have to go drive. You'll have to drive more on Sunday.
Oh, good.
You've missed heaps.
I know, but honestly, I'll have to go find. I wrote you a letter and you published it in a book like 30 years ago or 35 years ago, and I'm going to have to go find my parents and say, hey, we still got that?
Yeah.
So, anyway, I really enjoyed the show, so thank you for your time, and I hope everyone around Australia is having a great day today.
Emma, you're a little champion. Good on you. Love to talk to you.
All good. Bye.
See you. Bye. G'day, this is Macca.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Macca, it's Robin speaking from Newcastle.
Hi, Robin.
Just a quick call. I'm just wondering if I'm the only person who bacon spits at when I'm cooking it.
No, tell me more.
Well, of late, we have bacon and eggs Sunday mornings and listen to you, and the bacon I cook spits. And it's remarkably accurate because it's now spat in my right eye and my left eye. And today I just thought, well, I've had enough, and see if bacon doesn't like me or if other people are experiencing the same thing.
Well, I always thought it spitted a bit.
Well, not like this. It's, yes, no, I've never had this experience till lately.
Oh, well, we'll have to find it. Who's that talking in the background, Rob?
Sorry, that's, there's another show I think my husband's got on. Turn it down low, something like that.
Voice. Head in store or order online today to upgrade your summer. Cheers. Liquorland. T's and C's apply. Choose to drink wise.
And my experience of Beetlejuice was from the film and from the cartoon. I grew up with that cartoon. The Beetlejuice script was going around. I thought, I think this might be in my wheelhouse. But they wouldn't let me pitch on it because they were like, hey, this dude with a weird name from Australia and we have no idea, no. But I said to my agent, what if they let me write a couple of songs for free?
So that story in itself, how you got involved with the show, is amazing. For a start, after being involved with King Kong, did you go to Broadway before King Kong and just sort of land there and think, here we go, I've done opera,
No, it was a calamity. I got the job of Beetlejuice in 2014, and I had been writing and developing and workshopping it, and I was in New York in, I want to say, 2016, 2 years after, and I got a call, would I like to come to London after being in New York to sit in a room for 3 days to talk about a new iteration of King Kong. So I went to London and I met the new director, Drew McConey, and I met the new book writer, a guy called Jack Thorne, who wrote the script for a couple of amazing things. For Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, he wrote that. He also wrote the Christmas Carol that's been performed.
Oh yeah, there was one recently here.
Yeah,
the comedy.
It's been on twice at the comedy. That's his production with Matthew Orchard. And so I'd already been writing Beetlejuice for 2 years, and then King Kong came along and I wrote on that for 2 years, and they just happened to go into production at the same time, and they were on Broadway in the same season, which is not something I would ever have chosen. It was so stressful trying to juggle two big shows, but at one point you could stand on Broadway and see both the Broadway theatre marquee where King Kong was playing, which is on 53rd Street, and then you could see the marquee for the Winter Garden Theatre on 50th and Broadway where Beetlejuice was. Two shows with my stuff. I'd never been to Broadway before, and I was like, this is ridiculous. I would have liked to have spread it out a little bit, but that's the way it happened.
That's exciting. But so you were over there in New York for a while, and you didn't know anyone except Tim Minchin, your friend?
Oh yeah, I knew Tim, and then there were a few Aussies working over there that I caught up with.
So where do you start? You just hang around with the Aussies and say, who will I speak to, or what do I do here?
I was really lucky. That's from what I hear, that's the LA experience. You go to Los Angeles and you can kind of like
work in a